Reading The Unknown Reality by Jane Roberts, a Seth book, Volume 2. Okay, so we are in session 736, and Seth is going to name each of the families of consciousness and describe them briefly. But there are notes, but I'm not going to read them. Okay, so here are the notes, the opening notes, more about house hunting if you guys want to pause and read. And there's the rest of those notes. Pause and read. And it goes down, pause and read. So Seth starts his dictation saying house information later if you want it. There is a tie-in here with the Sumari characteristics. I'm not going to read all of the house information. I just want you guys to be able to see it if you want to read it, and read basically the families of consciousness here in this video. So, Seth states, generally, the Sumari have the capacity to reach out emotionally to others and to empathize. To some extent, this feeling for humanity often serves as an impetus for creative work. Many of them also have a mystical sense of connection with nature. At the same time, they can be relative isolationists, wanting to work in solitude. Various kinds of seemingly contradictory characteristics may appear then. One Sumari may have many deeply rewarding personal relationships. Another might find friends a distraction. One Sumari might enjoy performing in front of an audience, while another might not even be able to bear the thought. Since each person is unique, the various Sumari characteristics will then appear quite differently. Some live in cities, basking in the emotional nearness of others, content with a few flower pots for a reminder of nature's beauty. Another might have a farm. In most cases, however, the slant of consciousness is primarily creative. I am not again going into detail about the other families, but I will briefly discuss them because counterparts will generally belong to the same family. The first family that I mentioned, Gramada, for example, specializes in organization. Sometimes its members follow immediately after a revolutionary social change. Their organizational tendencies are expressed in any area of life, however. They are behind the art schools, for instance, though they may not be artists themselves. They may set up colleges, although they may or may not be scholars. The founders of giant businesses often belong to this family, as do some politicians and statesmen. They are active, vital, and creatively aggressive. They know how to put other people's ideas together. They often unite conflicting schools of thought into a more or less unifying structure. They are then often the founders of social systems. In most cases, for instance, your hospitals, schools, and religions, as organizations, are initiated by and frequently maintained by this group. These people, the Gramada, have excellent abilities in putting together solitary concepts that might otherwise go by the wayside. They are organizers of energy, directed toward effective social structures. They usually set up fairly stable, fairly reasonable governments, schools, fraternities, although they do not initiate the ideas behind these structures. The next group, Sumafi, deals primarily with teaching. Again, the relationship with others is good, generally speaking. They may be gifted in any field, but their primary interest will be in passing on their knowledge or that of others. They are usually traditionalists, therefore, although they may be brilliant. In a way, they are usually related to the family just mentioned, the Grammata, and to the Sumari, for they stand between the organized system and the creative artist. They transmit quote-unquote originality without altering it, however, through the social structures. I say they, the Sumafi, do not alter the originality. Of course, any interpretation of an event alters it, but generally they teach the disciplines while not creatively changing the content. As historians, for example, they pass down the dates of battles, and those dates are considered almost as immaculate facts, so that in the context of their training, they see no point in questioning the validity of such information. In the Middle Ages, they faithfully copied manuscripts. They are custodians in a way. Again, there are infinite variations. Many music or art teachers belong in that category, where the arts are taught with a love of excellence, a stress upon technique, into which the artist, who is often a Sumari, although not always by any means, into which the artist can put his or her creativity. The next family, Tumult in the order given, is primarily devoted to healing. This does not mean that these people may not be creative or organizers or teachers, but the primary slant of their consciousness will be directed to healing. You might find them as doctors and nurses, while not usually as hospital administrators. However, they may be psychics, social workers, psychologists, artists, or in the religions. They may work in flower shops. They may work on assembly lines for that matter. But if so, they will be healers by intent or temperament. I mentioned various professions or occupations to give clear examples, but a garageman may belong to this Tumult group, or to any group. In this case, the garageman would have a healing effect on the customers, and he would be fixing more than cars. The healers might also appear as politicians, however, psychically healing the wounds of a nation. An artist of any kind whose work is primarily meant to help also belongs in this category. You will find some heads of state, and particularly in the past, some members of royal families who also belong to this group. Those in the next group, Vold, are primarily reformers. They have excellent precognitive abilities, which of course means that, at least unconsciously, they understand the motion of probabilities. They can work in any field. In your terms, it is as if they perceive the future motion or direction of an idea, a concept, or a structure. They then work with all of their minds to bring that probability into physical reality. In conventional terms, they may appear to be great activists and revolutionaries, or they may seem to be impractical dreamers. They will be possessed by an idea of change and alteration, and will feel at least driven or compelled to make that idea a reality. They perform a very creative service as a rule, for social and political organizations can often become stagnant and no longer serve the purposes of the large masses of people involved. Members of this Vold family may also initiate religious revolutions, of course. As a rule, however, they have one purpose in mind: to change the status quo in whatever the area of primary interest. It is already easy to see how the purposes of these various families can intermesh, complement each other, and also conflict. Yet, all in all, almost, they operate as systems of creative checks and balances. Alright, so at this point, they take a break, and Jane says that she got in a flash the main activities, the predominant slants of consciousness of the next three families on Seth's list: the Milumet, the Zuli, and the Borladim. Yet, when she tried to describe their attributes for me, she had difficulty in doing so. She says the information was peculiarly evanescent. She did remember that Milumet represented many mystics, then added rather humorously that she didn't think the name fit the activity. She thought Zuli a much better mystical appellation. All of this, of course, while Jane herself is a Sumari mystic, but some mystical differences began to emerge when Seth resumed dictation. So Seth comes back in, and he says, the next family, Milumet, is composed of mystics. Almost all of their energy is directed in an inward fashion, with no regard as to whether or not inner experience is translated in usual terms. These persons, for instance, may be utterly unknown, and usually are, for as a rule they care not a bit about explaining their interior activities to others, nor, for that matter, even to themselves. They are true innocence and spiritual. They may be underdeveloped intellectually by recognized standards, but this is simply because they do not direct their intellect to physical focus. Those belonging to this Milumet family will not be in positions of authority, generally speaking, for they will not concentrate that long on specific physical data. However, they may be found in your country precisely where you might not expect them to be, on some assembly lines that require simple, repetitive action, in factories that do not require speed, however. They usually choose less industrialized countries then, with a slower pace of life. They have simple, direct, childish mannerisms and may appear to be stupid. They do not bother with the conventions. Strangely enough, though, they may be excellent parents, particularly in less complicated societies than your own. In your terms, they are primitives wherever they appear, yet they are deeply involved in nature, and in that respect they are more highly attuned psychically than most other people are. Their private experiences are often of a most venturesome kind, and at that level they help nourish the psyche of mankind. The next group, Zuli, is involved mainly with the fulfillment of bodily activity. These are the athletes. In whatever field, they devote themselves to perfecting the capacities of the body, which in others usually lie latent. To some extent, they serve as physical models. The vitality of creaturehood is demonstrated through the beauty, speed, elegance, and performance of the body itself. To some extent, these people are perfectionists, and in their activities there are always hints of quote-unquote superachievement, as if even physically the species tries to go beyond itself. The members of this family actually serve to point out the unrealized capacity of the flesh, even as, for example, great Sumari artists might give clues as to the artistic abilities inherent but not used in the species as a whole. The members of this group deal then in performance. They are physical doers. They are also lovers of beauty as it is corporally expressed. Members of this Zuli family can often serve as models for the artist or the writer, but generally speaking, they themselves transmit their energy through physical quote-unquote arts and performance. In your terms only, and historically speaking, they often appear at the beginnings of civilizations where direct physical bodily manipulation within the environment was of supreme importance. Then, normal physical reactions were simply faster than they are now, even while normal body relaxation was deeper and more complete. Okay, so that's where Seth ends, but the next chapter will give the rest of the families. And here are those notes if you guys are interested in reading about their house hunting activities. Pause and read. And it goes down. Pause and read. And these are the session notes that are not necessary to read. So if you are interested in reading them, there they are.